I'm going to read part of a nonfiction book to you today. This book is called What It's Like. It has 12 different stories of people who've done extraordinary things. So in this book, you don't actually have to read it from the beginning to the end. It's 12 different stories, so you can go to the table of contents and choose the story that sounds the most interesting to you and read just that one, which is what I'm going to do today. I picked one kind of in the middle of the book. It's about what it's like to save people from a burning building. It's about a firefighter. Now, before I read it, I want to read the acknowledgments page to you. That's the page that's from the author, where the author thanks the people who helped them write this book. Acknowledgments. First, I must thank everyone who shared their deeply personal and profound stories with me. Every conversation changed my life in some way, and for that I'm grateful. Thanks to Brooke Dworkin for helping get this idea off the ground. And thank you to Allie Britton for all of your editorial work and for seeing this through to completion. Thanks also to Stacey Perry for transposing most of these interviews. My wife and my daughter also have my gratitude for putting up with me and believing in me when I needed a little support. No one is ever in the fight alone. So from the acknowledgments page, I understood that the author interviewed these people, and then they took the interviews and put them into a story. And so it actually sounds like it's being told, in this case, by the firefighter. So as I'm reading today, I've practiced a strategy. It's a visualizing strategy where I actually have this movie happening in my mind, but I put it on a piece of paper to help me organize what I'm thinking. I always have a movie in my mind, whether I'm reading fiction or whether I'm reading nonfiction. When I read nonfiction and it's a topic that I'm not very familiar with, it's really important that I sketch out what I'm seeing and try to organize the words into a picture. So if you want to get a blank piece of notebook paper and just one pencil or one pen, you can try to do this along with me as I'm reading. I sketched the description that the firefighter gives of the call that they go on, how far they have to travel, what the building looks like when they arrived, and that really helped me understand the second part of this when he actually enters the building. So I'll show you the first photograph. Now, when I'm reading, also pay attention to numbers. Numbers helped me with my sketch because I understood how high things were or how far apart things were. And that helped me get a more clear picture of what things actually looked like. What it's like to save people from a burning building. Name, Lieutenant Jeff Kraft. Date, April 15th, 2005. Location, Calumet Park, Illinois. It's about 10 o'clock at night. There are only 3 of us on duty for the Calumet Park Fire Department, an engineer, myself, and 1 other firefighter. It's a little stressful because it's the first day on the job for one of the guys. He doesn't yet know where things are or how we operate at this department. We review scenarios that can help during the shift and the kinds of calls we typically get at this hour. Now, when he talks about this hour, I know in the very first sentence he told me it was 10 o'clock at night. So it's pretty late, and I'm thinking he's saying, like, when it's late at night, we get these kinds of calls. Car fires, assisting departments in neighboring towns, or responding to false alarms. So it sounds like at late at night that the fire department doesn't get many big calls to respond to. It's important for us to always be thinking and talking about our jobs. Suddenly, we get a call from the dispatcher. It's an announcement that there's a fire and the address of where we need to go. It's a structure fire, meaning an actual burning building. So I'm thinking back to the page before where he said at nighttime, at 10 o'clock at night, they normally don't get calls to go to structure fires. It's normally like a car fire or helping another fire department. So I'm sure they're surprised to be going to this. It's an apartment building on one of the main roads in town, only about 4 blocks from the firehouse. So there's a number, 4 blocks. And so I can picture it in my mind. I know a block is like each time that there's a street separating, that's considered 1 block. And that helped me get my sketch started. I drew the firehouse and then I drew streets, and 4 streets down, I drew this apartment building. We jump into the fire rig, a truck that pumps water and carries the firefighters and hoses, and go. As soon as we pull onto the street and steer toward the building, we see the fire in the air. I see the header, which is a plume of black smoke and fire rising 60 feet high. So there's another number, 60 feet high, but I'm going to come back to that one. During the short 4-block drive, we hear the police dispatch over the radio about the fire. There are people trapped inside the burning building, and the police are already on the scene. As we pull up, I see the fire coming out of the 2nd floor window. The flames are reaching up past the 3rd floor and onto the roof of the 3-story building. I notice that there's a small office business on the ground floor and apartments on our 2nd and 3rd floors. So I'm noticing that the author's talking about that the building is 3 stories tall, and so that helps me. I've already drawn my firehouse and sketched it to be 4 blocks away, and then I actually sketched the apartment building to have 3 levels of windows, because I know stories are levels that are above the ground. So now I'm going to pause and I'm going to go back. He said when they got to the apartment building that there was a plume of black smoke, and it was 60 feet in the air. So I added to my sketch, and I'm going to show you my sketch now. I added to my sketch this plume of black smoke coming above the apartment building, and I labeled it 60 feet high. So now I'm using the numbers to help me understand what it looks like. 3 stories, 3 different levels above ground. Down here, these are my streets. 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks down until they get to where this fire was.
Is it mine?
Our first concern when we arrive to a fire is to search for living people. Then we want to save as much of the building and surrounding structures as possible. The 1st floor office is closed and dark. Plus, it's below the origin of the fire, so we don't have to worry about it too much since fire spreads upward. We know there are people on the upper floors, so that's where I plan to go first. I jump out of the truck and meet the police officer who arrived just before us. He says that some of the residents from the apartments escaped from the building and told him that there are people trapped on the 3rd floor. So I added that to my sketch when I realized that there were people on the 3rd floor. I have this building already drawn, and I was thinking, well, so what? Well, so what is that there's people all the way on the top floor that this firefighter now has to climb up to get to.
Is it my turn?
My engineer gets to work on preparing the water line and hooking up to a nearby hydrant, while the new firefighter calls for backup. I have all of my fire gear on at this point. To see if you can sketch this part, if you haven't sketched what the fire station to the apartment looks like, can you sketch the part where this firefighter describes his uniform? I'm wearing boots, fire-resistant pants and coat, helmet, fire-resistant gloves, and my air pack. I put my air mask over my face and kick in the door that opens to the stairway leading up to the apartments. So go back and play that, or I'll reread that part. I'm wearing boots, fire-resistant pants and coat, helmet, fire-resistant gloves, and my air pack. I put on my air mask over my face and kick in the door that opens to the stairway leading up to the apartments. Can you visualize that? Can you draw a quick sketch of what that looks like? Our policy, a policy is like a rule. And the policy of most fire departments, so this is the rule of the fire departments, is never to go on a search alone in a burning building. At the very least, have another firefighter around with a hose to protect the stairwell in case the fire spreads. But as I enter the burning building, I ask myself, if that was my family up there, would I want someone to save them?
Are you going to do the fire part?
Ooh, Ruby has a question. We'll let Ruby ask her question. What's your question?
Mom, are you going to do the fire part?
Yeah, we write about the firefighter. So we're going to ask them a question before we're done. Hop back down. Okay. So my question to you before we turn this off is think about that question the firefighter asked himself at the end. And I'll read the rest tomorrow. But it says, I ask myself, if that was my family up there, would I want someone to wait to save them? So he's asking himself a really tough question. Has there ever been a time where you've had to ask yourself a tough question? Like, I think about if you were doing something with your friends and your friends were about to do something that you knew would probably be a bad decision or might get you in trouble. Have you ever asked yourself, should I do this or should I not? Think about a time like that. Try to connect to this firefighter and this decision he's trying to make. Also, if you made a sketch like mine, if you visualized, I would love to see what you did. And I'll come back and I'll read more of this tomorrow. Before I leave, I'll show you the photograph. This is the real photograph of the firefighter who's telling this story, Jeff Kraft. Bye.